Hello, everyone. Welcome to July's Training Tuesday for OU Campus. Today's topic is creating directory variables. During the presentation, all participants will be in listen-only mode as this session is being recorded. If you have a question during the presentation, please use the Q&A function found at the bottom of your screen. I'll attempt to answer all of your questions throughout the presentation, but if there are any remaining questions that I can't get to, I will provide an answer by email. I'm your presenter today, Barbara McQuillan, Training Supervisor. So let's go ahead and just jump in. So today we're going to be talking about directory variables. So our basic plan for today, we're going to start by talking about, well, what is a directory variable? We'll talk a little bit about the default system variables that already exist inside the OU Campus platform. And then we're going to talk about creating custom directory variables for your specific needs. So starting at the top, what is a directory variable? And I'm going to do it. A directory variable is a variable defined at a directory level. Essentially, we're talking about values that you can set on a folder or a section and then affect any of the pages or folders within it. So an important thing to note when we're talking about directory variables is that these values can only be set or edited by a level 9 or a level 10 administrator. So if you're planning on having some sort of value that needs to be edited by a lower level user, rather than going down the route of directory variables, I suggest considering creating form fields in a section properties file, something like an _props.pcf file. That way those files will be accessible to your lower level users and they can make edits and changes if needed. If the changes or the values that you're going to be setting are fine to be restricted to administrators, then directory variables will absolutely work for you. So let's talk about some of those system variables. So essentially there are 3 of them that are already built into the platform itself. So you have a default images folder, which essentially allows you to set the default folder when a content editor clicks on that insert edit image and they go browsing. So it allows you to direct them to the images folder you want them to be using. Similarly, there's a default media folder. This sets that default folder. So when the content editor goes browsing on either the insert/edit media button, that's when you're in OU Campus 11, or insert edit video when you're in OU Campus V10, this is the default location where they're going to be dropped off. And then finally, there is a default system variable for publish, and it allows you to define file extensions that should be skipped whenever a folder or a site publish is performed. So I'll show you more about that one inside of OU Campus itself so you can kind of see the caveats on that. But let's take a moment right now. We'll flip over inside of OU Campus so I can show you these 3 default ones. So here's my sandbox. Scrolling down, I'm going to use my direct edit link and I'm going to go ahead and log in to OU Campus. We'll zoom in a bit here, make it a little bit easier for you to see. So from the root of my site, I did go ahead and create a folder called Creating Directory Variables for our Training Tuesday here. So this is where we'll dive in. So there are a couple of different ways to get to the access settings that allow you to go through those system variables. So from the row itself, when I'm looking at it in this page's view, I can click Edit and I can go to Access. Scrolling all the way down to the bottom, that's where I'll find my directory variables. You're going to notice I have a section up here where I can add. Create new variable would allow me to use those custom variables that I'll be creating later on in this session. The system variables by default are here, and you're going to notice I have a couple here that are listed as inherited variables. If I scroll down a little bit, you'll see these 2 here. An inherited variable is going to be a variable that was set at a higher level. So either at a parent folder or parent section, or in this case, because I'm at the root, you can actually set your directory variables at the site itself. So my default image folder and my publish directory variable are set at the site, but from here I could override them by simply having something else set here. So let's go ahead and cancel this out for a second. We'll open up this folder. In my OU Campus 11 interface, there's a second way where I can get to those access settings. When I'm in the folder itself, notice that little key icon opens the exact same window here. So just another way to be able to get to this particular window so I can make adjustments. So before I make any changes or adjustments here, let's see what the default behavior looks like. So opening up my page here, I'll go ahead and open up my main content region. A little zoomed in. So we'll zoom out a little bit to allow my toolbar to realign itself. So clicking on that insert/edit image, when I go browsing for the source, this is where I'm dropped off by default. So this location was set at the site level. I can override this on this section here. Cancel, cancel. My insert edit media or the insert edit video if you're in OU Campus v10. Again, when I browse, right now I'm just getting dropped off inside my current folder because nothing has been set for it yet. Cancel, cancel. Let's go back out and actually set some values for those. So from here, we'll go ahead and click on that access settings. And down at the bottom, I'm going to go ahead and add a default image folder. Now, I've created an image folder and a media folder directly at the root of my site. So that's where I'm going to drop off my people here. So /images, it is a root relative path. And I'll create a second one for my media and call it /media. I'll go ahead and save. So back inside this file here, back inside that editable region, when I open up my images folder here and I browse, I'm now getting dropped off directly inside that images folder that's at the root of the site. Same basic behavior here. When I go to click insert edit media or insert edit video, I get dropped off directly at that media folder right at the root of the site. So this is a nice way for you to kind of direct your content editors to make sure that they are starting in the appropriate location and don't have to go digging through a huge folder structure. I'm going to make a quick adjustment on my screen here, yeah, so that way I can keep an eye on any Q&A questions as they come in. Okay, so those are my default folders here. We're going to go ahead and shift this over here. I'm going to go ahead and save without, or exit without saving. Let's talk about that publish directory variable. So the way this one is set up, it allows me to specify which file extensions should not get published when a folder or a site level publish happens. So you're going to notice right now at my site level, I do already have skip set up for my XSL files, but let's add something else in here. So I currently have an INC file. Maybe I don't want that file to get published. We'll add my publish directory variable here. And the syntax here is going to be skip, colon, and then my list of file extensions, comma separated. I can list as many as I want. So for our purposes right now, I'm just going to skip that INC file. Save. Now, this setting that I just created is on the folder itself. So publish operations that pass through the folder are going to get caught by this rule. If I don't pass the publish operation through the folder, it will not apply. So for example, right here, I can still directly publish out this include file. So publish will occur here. Because I'm not passing through that folder. So notice down here, my file is now published. It published without an issue. Same idea if I select multiple files. Again, I'm not going through the folder itself. Publish again works here. And I'll include my checked out files so I don't get an error message on my index page. So again, successfully published both of these files. Now, if I take a step up in my folder file directory and I attempt to publish out the folder itself, now I'm passing through that folder. So publish skip will. Notice I only have one file that's successfully published. Because I tried to pass that publish operation through the folder itself, that rule was caught, so my include file did not get the published. Let's check. Opening up that navigation include file, if I switch over to versions, I have my initial publish will occur, the publish again works here. That last one isn't appearing here because this file did not publish through that operation. So that publish directory variable will catch if I'm publishing out whole folders or if I'm doing a full site publish, by going to set up sites and trying to publish out, pardon me, my entire site here. It will get caught because I'm pushing this rule through all of the folder structure. Let's go back to content pages. So that kind of wraps up the default system variables. So let's talk about creating custom variables. So custom directory variables are really going to be utilized based upon your website design. So whatever the needs of your website design, a directory variable could be created. Keep in the back of your mind though, these are going to be set and edited only by your level 9 or 10 administrators. So if this website design is something that you can set as an admin and kind of forget from that point forward or adjust rarely, a directory variable will probably work for you. But if it's something that you want your lower level users to be able to have access to, think about that properties file instead. So some common instances or examples that I've seen of using custom directory variables is if there's a particular type of text that you want to set across the entire section. So maybe there's a section header that you're going to set in a directory variable and it'll be applied to all of your different pages. I've seen adjustments made to the design display. So maybe changing coloration or switching out background images or things like that. An important note on this piece though, is if the design display is controlled by CSS, you're going to need to find that rule and bring it in line to the actual HTML itself. It needs to be inside an XSL file in order for our directory variable to be called. The directory variables won't be called in any files outside of a .xsl because they're going to be defined in XSL. Finally, I've seen examples where you're choosing a particular header or particular footer. I see this used frequently when we have schools where each of their root level folders is maybe a different college. So the College of Business is going to have their own header footer files. The College of Mathematics will have their own header footer files. It's the type of thing that I can set as a directory variable. Everything inside that section is going to get that particular header and footer, and I don't need to worry about making edits or adjustments or my content editors needing to get in there. It all just is set and then kind of taken care of and forgotten from that point. When you are creating custom directory variables, it is a best practice to set up some conditional logic in the event that the section's value is left blank. This is just kind of the catch-all, just to make sure that if a value has not been appropriately set, you don't end up with something broken on your page. So you can set values at the site level the way we were seeing it before. So if we come back over here and we look at our access settings, one way to set a default value is to essentially set it at the site level. So, there's always some value catching it. The tricky part in that is if someone creates one of their directory variables and goes to add it, but does not input a value. So now this is taking precedence because I am closer to the content here, but I still don't have a value here. So having a condition already built into your XSL saying if this value is blank, use this default instead. It's a good way just to make sure nothing breaks. So let's actually build some directory variables and see what all those pieces that work together will look like. So I'm going to open up a slew of tabs here. So I'm going to keep my section here. This is the section we'll continue playing with, but I'm going to open up content pages in a new tab. My directory variables are defined in XSL. So from the root of my site, inside _ resources, inside XSL, typically you're going to find any of your variables that have already been predefined inside _ shared, and inside a file usually called variables.xsl. Mine is called ou-variables.xsl, something like that. That's where you're going to find your predefined variables. We'll bring this code a little bit larger so it's a little bit easier to see. So in here I have variables that are already been defined as part of my implementation, but all the way down at the bottom, I created a quick comment here. This is where we're going to start creating our directory variables custom for our design here. So let's take the first example I was talking about before. Maybe I want a section title for all of my pages. So if I come back over here and we look at this page, the title of my page here just says creating directory variables. Maybe every page inside this section is going to be a Training Tuesday page. So I want to have the words Training Tuesday here at the front and then allow my content editors to essentially adjust this part as part of the page heading. Well, I can create a directory variable for this and then set it on the directory. So back over to my OU variables.xsl. I'm going to go ahead and start defining what I want this, this directory variable to be called. And I'm going to use an element called XSL param. I'm going to give it a name here. And this is going to be self-closing. So using XSL param here, a parameter versus a variable, because that is another XSL element, which we'll talk about in just a little bit. Variable. An XSL param allows me to define the value for it outside of its current context. So we use XSL param here because it allows me to pull the value from the OU Campus platform itself. XSL variable is not going to be defined outside of its current context. I can use XSL variable when I'm creating that conditional logic, so I have a default value for it. So we'll come back to that line 47 in just a little bit. For now, my XSL param is going to be what defines my directory variable. In the name itself here, I'm going to start it with OU colon. That is telling the platform itself, OU Campus's platform is going to provide the value for this. So OU Campus looks for any params that start with that OU colon, and it will know to pull the value from the directory variables on the access settings of that folder. All right, so we're going to use this in order to create a section title. So let's be really inventive and call it section-title. Perfect. I'm going to go ahead and save this file here. Now I need to use it. So again, we're going to open up another tab with my content pages. So I'm going to define this particular variable, but I need to call it on that page type itself. So this particular page is actually being built using my interior.xsl. I know that when I go to source. So that's where I'm going to pull this in. So from the root of my site, inside_resources, inside XSL, let's open up interior.xsl. And here, scrolling down on line 29 right now, I have my header, I have my primary H1, and then I have this XSL value of, which is pulling in essentially the parameter that is named heading. So the page heading that my editors are creating, that value is being dropped in here. Now, I want to drop in the section title before this. So I'm going to want like section title here, and then maybe dash, space, and then whatever the page heading is. So this text section title, that's where I'm going to drop in the call for that value. So we're going to do that with an XSL value of. I'm going to set this to select. And this is going to be self-closing, so that'll clean up my error values there. So when I'm selecting a variable inside of XSL, I always start with the money symbol that tells XSL, hey, this is a variable, go get that value. And I'm calling this OU colon section dash title. So now my section title is going to be applied here, dash, and then whatever the name of the heading is. I'll go ahead and save this interior.xsl. Now let's come back over here. I don't have a section title set yet. So if I do a quick refresh, I have my dash, I just have no section title set. So let's set that. Back up to my pages, clicking on that little key, I'm going to scroll down, and this is where I'm going to add the custom directory variable. So plus add, I have this create new variable. I can start typing here. I can click create new. Either of those will work. Now, the OU colon tells the platform, grab the value from here, from this directory variable section. So because I'm placing it here, I don't need the OU colon. All I need is the name of that particular parameter, in this case, section dash title. So for this section title, I'm going to call it Training Tuesday. Bottom right-hand corner, we'll save. Let's go back to our page. Perfect. So there's my section title. This section title is going to apply to all of the pages inside this section. And by default, any child sections in here will also pick up this particular setting as an inherited directory variable. Cool. All right, so I currently have my section title set up. Now, if this were blank though, the way we saw it before, I would literally just have dash and the page heading. That looks a little weird. So I probably want to have some sort of catch in there, some sort of conditional logic that says, if the value is blank, use this instead. So for that, we're going to go back to my OU variables.xsl. So here's my param with my OU section title. I'm going to add another line in here, and this is going to be an XSL variable. I'm going to give it a name. I want this to be associated with a parameter, but I still want it to be unique enough that I'm not confused about what I am grabbing. So for this, I'm going to call it display section title, because this is going to be the section title that is displayed, whether it's the value of this section title or a default that I'm about to create. So in my select line here, I'm going to put my conditional statement. This is going to be self-closing. So here we go. If, and then in parentheses, so if this is blank, remember this is XSL, so to call that value, the money sign in front of it. So if OU section dash title is equal to, and then single quote, so if it's an empty value, outside of the parentheses, then I'm going to put in my default text here. It is going to be a string, so I'm going to have a set of quotes. Else, so if there is a value for that OU section title, I'm just going to call that value again. So if the section title is blank, then default section title here. Else, actually grab the value that's been placed. So let's go ahead and save this variable. We'll come back to the page itself. So we do have a value set here, so let's take that out and break the world. Clicking on our little key. I could completely remove this, or I could just leave that as blank, either way. Save. Back in here. Ooh. Ah, there's one step we didn't do. We defined our variable with this new name. This is the name I need to call in my interior.xsl. So let's copy that. Back over to interior. It's still just looking for that OU section title. I needed to now look for display dash section dash title. Save. Back to my page. Refresh. There it is. So now I have my default value. If I put in a value here, it'll get picked up. So I have this conditional now as the backup, just in case there is not a value set up there. Perfect. All right. So there's my first example if we're just kind of adding text in. So maybe I wanted to use that second example where I'm adjusting the design display. So let's take a look at this page. Up at the top, I have my search bar here. And if I was to go ahead and inspect it, I have a div, this one all the way up here with my class of search bar. And I can see here's my background color being applied and my styles.css. Maybe this particular section is part of a particular college, so their coloration is going to be different. So I want to be able to adjust what the background color on that particular bar is. So first thing I'm going to need to do is move this CSS rule inline, so that way my XSL has access to it. All of this is controlled in my common.xsl because it is my header, my footer. It is not part of the page unique content. So over to this other tab that had the interior. We're going to walk away from this for just a little bit. And we'll go to the common.xsl. And I'm looking for search dash bar. So there we are on line 121. I have my search bar. Okay. So what I'm going to want to do is pull the style here. So I need to take it out of the CSS and move it here in line. So one more tab. Inside underscore resources, inside CSS, inside my styles.css. You can do a quick search for it. I actually found it earlier as I was pulling everything together and preparing. There it is on my line 44. So I'm essentially just going to comment it out here, save. Remember, CSS is pulled from my production server, so I'm going to publish this out. So remove background color. Let's check the page itself, make sure that we did appropriately remove that color. I'm going to refresh with the cleared cache. Yep, that background color is gone. So now I can put it in line. Over to my common.xsl. Here we are on my search bar. Space. I'm going to use the attribute style. I'm going to say background dash color colon, and I'm just going to put in just a quick filler tester color here just to make sure I'm putting it in the right spot. So I'm going to do red. That should be nice and dramatic. Save this file here. Back to my page, refresh. Perfect. That's exactly what I wanted. Nice bright red. So now I have control of this background color here inside my XSL. Now I'm going to create my directory variable so I actually have control over it. So inside my OU variables.xsl, let's go ahead and create a new XSL program. We'll go ahead and give this a name. This is going to be self-closing. So let's give it a name. I'm going to call it OU search dash bar. And I'm going to create my XSL variable right now. A name, and it's going to have a select that has a conditional statement. So let's repurpose this one here and adapt. Self-closing. So my variable is going to need a unique name. Again, I want it to be specific enough so I know what it is, but I want it to be unique enough from the program so I don't get them confused. So I'm going to call this search dash bar dash color. So if OU colon search dash bar is empty, then, well, what color do we want it to be if it's empty? How about green? Cool. Else, actually use that OU search dash bar coloration. All right, so I have my variable set up. We'll go ahead and save. Now I actually need to call it. So back over here into my common.xsl. I have my style here, background color, colon red. So I want to replace that red with the value of that XSL variable. So I'm going to do XSL value dash of, and I'm going to select single quotes. This is going to be self-closing. I'm going to select the variable we created, search bar color. Copy. Paste it in here. We're about to break the world. It is okay. Good. Got that. Beautiful. Let's save. Let's come back to our page here. We're going to do a refresh. And it is so angry. It is so angry. So I'm getting my parsing error here. It's essentially telling me that I can't have that opening angled bracket there inside of the attribute. So we're in this kind of funny situation. I want the value of to get inserted right here, but I can't open up this XSL value of element while I'm inside an attribute. So there is a nice handy dandy way to kind of do this shorthand. So instead of doing the full XSL value of, there is a a shorthand notation that allows me to set it up. And essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll up here until I get to a parent XSL element. It could be any parent. I've actually seen some implementations where all the way up at the top in the initial XSL template or in the initial XSL style sheet, you can declare this particular attribute, so it'll apply to everything. But for our purposes, I'm just going to put it here in the template that's wrapping us. And I'm going to put in this attribute called expand-text and set it equal to yes. And what this essentially means is that any time the XSL comes across a single curly brackets, open and close, anything inside of it will automatically get an XSL value of applied to it. So it's my way to get around this issue. So I don't need all of this stuff. And I don't need the closing at the end or the single quote. I literally just need open curly braces, close curly braces. So back over to my page, let's do a quick refresh. Our transformation error has been fixed. Notice our default value here is now green. That's my go-to, my conditional logic. And if we come up to my access settings, let's go ahead and add my variable. What did we call it? Let's remember. We called it OU : search bar. So we're going to create a search bar variable. We need a new color. How about purple? Save. Back over here. Yeah, beautiful. So a nice way to be able to make those CSS changes as required by this particular section. All right, so next thing I want to show you was choosing section files. So maybe headers, footers, things like that. My sandbox is implemented a little bit differently than most implementations, most of your customer websites would be, in that my header is actually chopped up into a lot of little pieces. So it's a little hard for me to demonstrate on the header, but this mega navigation will work perfectly for it. So I'm going to use this as the example. So maybe inside this particular section, I want a completely different set of mega nav options here. So essentially what I did, back to pages, from the root of my site, inside _resources, inside includes, the mega nav is the one that we saw currently being applied to all of my pages across the board. I made a copy and I called it meganav-training. And from here, I have all sorts of different drop-down options available. So on that particular section, I want to make sure that this is the mega nav that's going to be used. So back over here, let's take a look inside my common.xsl, because that is going to be where this part is built. How do I know that? It's because it's a part of my common pages. So all of my pages have the header, have a mega nav, and my page unique content starts underneath that. So this will be in common.xsl. Let's go find it. Inside common.xsl, scrolling. There's my nav. Here. I have this XSL choose starting on line 147. So walk with me through this for a second. When we're testing that OU action is publish or compare. So depending upon which view you're in inside of OU Campus, it could be pulling different pieces of information. So essentially this XSL choose, again, as part of my designs implementation, is going to do a server-side include whenever I am publishing the page or in compare. Otherwise, it's doing an unparsed text of this particular navigation file. So it's just a way to make sure that it is included properly when it gets published out as a server-side include, but it's displaying properly inside of OU Campus as an unparsed text call. So because of the way this is set up, I'm really going to need to make adjustments in both of these places to make sure it looks right inside OU Campus and it is publishing out correctly. So this root relative path _resources includes megnav.inc. I'm going to copy that because that's what I'm going to use as my default value. if my directory variable isn't set. So we'll hold on to this for now. Let's move over to my OU variables.xsl, and we're going to start building out another variable. XSL param. We'll go ahead and give this a name. This will be self-closing. So because this is going to be our meganav, I'm literally just going to call it OU colon meganav. I'm going to add in an XSL variable underneath it. Variable. It'll have a name. It'll have a select rule. Again, it'll be self-closing. So for the name here, again, I want to give it something that helps me to associate it with the directory variable, but I want it to be unique so that way I don't get confused by it. So I'm going to go ahead and call this section-meganav. And I use my big conditional statement here. I don't want to lose my root relative path, so I'm just going to drop it there for a second. So, copy, paste. So if OU meganav is empty, then we're going to use that file. Else, we're going to use whatever value is set in meganav. Okay, we'll go ahead and save. So now I have my variable set up. Back to common.xsl. Now we actually need to call it in there. So again, this is going to be a call inside of an attribute. So I'm going to want to make sure that I have that expand text applied to this space. I can add this here into my XSL choose. Expand text, set it equal to yes. And then that way I don't need to do my XSL value of, I can just drop it in here. So I don't need the single quotes here because I'm pulling a variable itself. If I had the single quotes, it would literally pull question mark and then the section now. So I don't want that. I want the actual value of it here. So we're going to do, money symbol section dash meganav. That's what we had called our variable here. Yep, agreed. And I'm going to do it here as well. Money symbol section dash meganav. I don't think the space matters, but we'll take it out anyway. Okay, let's go ahead and save. So, moment of truth, over to our page. We're going to refresh, and if nothing's broken, perfect, life is good. So it's still pulling in that primary meganav. Now we're actually going to put in the value that we want. So back to our pages list. We're going to open up our access settings, and we're going to create a new directory variable. We called it simply meganav. So that's what we're going to create here, meganav. And now, because of the way we set up this rule, because it's literally just dropping in the root relative path, I actually need to have the full root relative path here. / resources / includes / meganav - training dot, and I need the production server extension. So even though inside OU campus, the extension is a PCF, when it gets published out, I certainly don't want it calling a PCF file on the published version. I need the include file. So I need the .inc here. Save. Okay, let's open up that page again. Woohoo! Kittens, bacon, and zombies. Perfect. So I have my appropriate file being pulled in. Now, this works out well where I have to put in that entire root relative path if there are an infinite number of kind of variations. So it's not a simple choose yes, choose no. It is this, I'm going to create additional include files all over the place. I don't have the exact URLs right now. So I'm going to want to have this flexibility to be able to drop in whatever I want into this. So this does work. But sometimes I may have situations where I need it to be a little bit more user-friendly than having a full root relative URL here. In cases like that, I can kind of have situations hard-coded in And instead of asking for this root relative path, I can instead have a singular word or a singular phrase that I'm asking my administrators to call here. So essentially, I'm going to create an XSL if statement. So if this particular new custom directory variable has this value, then enact this process. And then if not, just don't do anything. So it's a little bit easier in situations where I have a particular section where there's a header file, there's a footer file, there's a pre-footer file. All of those things are going to be unique to the section, but they're always going to be paired together. So the business college has a header, has a footer, has a pre-footer, but those three will always be grouped together. So rather than having three distinct directory variables where I'm choosing the header, the footer, the pre-footer, I can simply have a directory variable that says, this is the business section. And then in the XSL, it knows, ooh, XSL if this is a business section, include these things. So that's what we're going to take a look at next. So let's say on our page here, in this particular section, I have a pre-footer. So only this section is going to get the pre-footer. So I'm going to set up my XSL to grab a pre-footer, and I'm going to use friendly text inside of my directory variable when I'm actually setting it on the folder itself. So inside of ou-variables.xsl, we're going to create one more, and I call it XSL param, and I give it a name. I'm going to set it to ou:pre-footer. Now, for this particular one, because I'm going to use an XSL if, the XSL if statement is essentially true or false. If it's true, do these things. If it's false, just skip over everything inside of it. So I'm not going to actually need to set up an XSL variable here because I don't need a default case. If this particular directory variable is not set or is set as a blank value, the XSL if simply won't be enacted. So I don't need the variable for this one, so I'm just going to set it up as is. Save. The pre-footer itself is going to be in common because I'm going to want to put it just above the footer itself. So scrolling, scrolling, scrolling. Where did we put it? Line 70. Scroll, scroll, scroll. There it is. So I already have some pre-footer code in here that I've just commented out. It's not pretty. It's not the nicest pre-footer in the world, but it's demonstrative. So I'm going with it. So we're going to uncomment this. And I'm essentially going to wrap this in an XSL if. This is not self-closing. The opening and closing tags actually wrap what will be enacted. So my XSL if, I'm going to say test if, let's say that ou:pre-footer is equal to, and now this is where I'm going to put the friendly text. So this is the word that my administrators would need to call in order for the pre-footer to be added. So this could be something like business. So if my pre-footer is equal to business, then this will be acted. For me, I'm a big fan of kittens. So I'm going to say if my pre-footer value is equal to kittens, then it will enact this piece. We'll go ahead and save. Make sure we saved our variable here. Back over to the page. Refresh. We don't have anything set yet, so no pre-footer is going to appear because it's inside that XSL if. Because the pre-footer is not set, it's not going to enact the pre-footer, so I don't need to worry about it. So no default necessary. The world is not broken. Back to my pages, clicking on that little access setting, scrolling down, we're going to go ahead and add, what did we call that? We called it pre-footer. We're going to set it to kittens. Save. Back inside my page, we scroll down a little bit. Ah, there's my pre-footer. Look how adorable. So the extra little white spacing here is actually just because my sandbox was not designed to have a pre-footer. So my footer actually has a margin above it. So that would be something you'd want to keep an eye on for your design. If you're adding things into it like a pre-footer, you're going to want to make sure that the elements that already exist as part of your design have CSS that accommodates it appropriately. So that might be something that I would pull into, say, the CSS inline. If the pre-footer's here, remove the margin. If the pre-footer's not, leave the margin in. You can go from there. But that, in a nutshell, essentially wraps up how you would create directory variables. So at this point, we've seen how you would go ahead and add in text. We've seen how you would make adjustments to your design displays by pulling your CSS in line. And we've seen how you can then choose header and footer files either by root relative path or by using a more user-friendly text option there. All right, so question says, how do you handle the data type for the variables? For example, when you create a different background for the nav, you enter the string purple for the background. Can you have that be a hex number with the same variable? Let's go ahead and give it a try. So generally speaking, the value that we're pulling in is going to be just passed to that variable. So the only thing that I would wonder about is the encoding. But generally speaking, so let's get rid of purple. And let's put that in. Save. Yep. So because we have it essentially accepting that value and just dumping it into that spot in that inline CSS, you could have your hex numbers, your RGB values, whatever it is that you are planning on having dumped appropriately. I would say anytime you do have a special character, test it out first, just to make sure that it works before making it live to all of your editors. So I worried a little bit about the pound symbol. It depends what generation you're from, pound symbol there. But it looks like it's passing without a problem. It's just being pulled as a text value. So yep, that absolutely works. All right, if there are any other questions, go ahead and add them into the Q&A. So we have a question here. Components don't seem to recognize directory location variables for file image fields. Is this an issue or limitation? Directory location variables. I may need a little bit of clarification on that. So when you're talking about directory location variables for file or images, so are you talking about when you're setting up, so I'm currently under content, components. I've gone ahead and just opened one of the components that I know has an image selector in it. So let's go ahead and edit it. So under advanced, we do have a starting location here. Yeah, this is a hard-coded starting location. The component itself is not being passed through the XSL until it is rendered. So the form question itself here is not being passed through the XSL, so that default images folder is not being identified. That is an excellent observation though. Allow me to go ahead and make a note, and I'm gonna report that back to our product development team. It would be nice for component fields like my image chooser here to be able to assess that default value. All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate you pointing that out. Is it possible to have pre-populated values like how the default image folder is? For the left-hand drop-downs, do those need to be entered manually each time? For the left-hand drop-downs, are we still talking about components? So I think if we're talking about components, when we have my component kind of set up here, there is placeholder text. No, we're talking to directory variables. Thank you very much. All right, back over to our pages. So, gotcha. So as we've been creating these new directory variables here, I've essentially had to manually type in which variables these are. Notice down here at the bottom though, anything that gets inherited is pre-populated here. So if I were to say create a new section in here, this section is going to inherit the directory variables I've already set above. So my section title, search bar, pre-footer, mega nav, they're all going to be here as part of inherited. So what I often see is we'll have these values, or rather these directory variables created at the site level with 0 value in them. So like a null value, nothing in that value field. So that way they appear in the dropdown. So that way you as an editor or as an administrator in this case, don't have to memorize the exact phrasing. So I often see our new implementations will have that. They'll set them at the site level with no value in it. So that way that conditional catch inside the XSL variable is already being applied, but you have it pre-typed here. So that is how you would be able to get it added into this left-hand dropdown. So that way you don't have to memorize all of them. All right. As you guys are considering additional questions, let me go ahead and just let you know. Our next Training Tuesday is going to take place on August 25th. It is going to be covering multi-site administration. So if you have an account that has multiple sites, or if you're considering creating additional sites within your account, this will be a great Training Tuesday for you to be able to talk about considerations, benefits, challenges associated with it, and ways in order to make it work. All right. Absolutely my pleasure. All right, if you guys have any additional questions, by all means, I'll stick around for a little while. But if not, I want to wish you all a great rest of your day and rest of your week. Take care.